Disclaimer. The video serves informational and entertainment purpose only. The content is considered speculative and should not be treated as confirmed fact. We encourage you to conduct your research and form your conclusion.
Does it defy the haters, or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
It's very safe to say at this point that Bob Iger is by far the worst Disney CEO of all time based on how he handled multiple ratings disasters and box office failures when it came to movies and television shows. When you really bundle that all together, they have lost billions of dollars in the process for 7, 8, 9 years now. But when you're looking at the overall scenario, what happened with Snow White, what happened with the Acolyte series for Star Wars and Lucasfilm, and especially with the Ironheart series most recently, that's just to name a few, by the way. Those are real big examples of exactly how Bob Iger really doubled down on the typical DEI agenda to please the top 3 shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Well, just recently, Bob Iger made a very swift move, a move that I actually feel is a negative one.
Daredevil was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. And that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart.
Imagine being the man who built Disney's modern empire, only to become the face of its collapse. That's the tragic irony Bob Iger now faces. Just a few years ago, Iger was hailed as the architect of Disney's golden age, the man who brought us Marvel, Pixar, Lucasfilm, and even 21st Century Fox. But now, that legacy is unraveling fast. As Ironheart faces brutal backlash and ratings nosedive, insiders reveal Disney is spiraling into panic mode. Robert Downey Jr., the very soul of the MCU, is reportedly furious after Disney tried to rope him into damage control for a show he never asked to defend. Executives are scrambling, emergency calls, corporate ultimatums, layoffs, and behind closed doors, pure chaos. And here's the twist. This isn't just about a bad show. This is about a company that lost its soul chasing shareholder appeasement over storytelling. It's no longer about delighting fans. It's about surviving the storm. And if you thought Disney was too big to fail, what's happening now might just change your mind. In this expose, we'll break down the full story behind the Ironheart disaster, Robert Downey Jr.'s explosive reaction, and how Bob Iger's desperate attempt to salvage his reputation might be tearing Disney apart from within. Robert Downey Jr. isn't just a name. He's the face that built the Marvel Cinematic Universe from the ground up. His portrayal of Iron Man didn't just launch a billion-dollar franchise, it redefined modern superhero storytelling. But today, that legacy is being dragged into a battle he never asked for. Insiders confirm that Marvel executives and Bob Iger personally reached out to Downey Jr., pressuring him to make a public statement defending Ironheart and its lead character, Riri Williams. Why? Because fan backlash is spiraling. Ratings are tanking. The discourse online is brutal. So what's the solution? Apparently, call in the cavalry. Leverage the goodwill of Iron Man himself to calm the storm. But RDJ isn't playing along. Sources say he's furious. He believes this move isn't about honoring the Marvel legacy. It's about damage control. He's made it clear he'll support storytelling, but not propaganda. He refuses to be a pawn in a war between corporate image and genuine fan connection. And here's the kicker. Disney contractually built his involvement into future MCU phases, including Avengers, Doomsday. They thought they could corner him, but this time, he's pushing back. This isn't just a disagreement. It's a line in the sand, a warning shot to Marvel, and maybe the first true sign that the MCU's foundation is beginning to crack.
Going out there from the media that you are just a racist if you don't like Ironheart. The reason it's getting this backlash, the reason it's getting bad reviews, the reason that fans don't like what they see, it's just because all the damn racists out there, Jay. It's MAGA trolls, it's racist.
Bob Iger once stood as the untouchable titan of modern entertainment, the man who turned Disney into a kingdom of unstoppable franchises. Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, 21st Century Fox. Every acquisition was a masterstroke, or so it seemed. But now, that legacy is rotting from the inside. When Iger returned as CEO in late 2022, fans and investors alike believed he would steady the ship after Chapek's chaotic tenure. But instead of fixing the cracks, Iger doubled down on the very strategies that began Disney's downfall: franchise milking, rushed content slates, and tone-deaf pandering disguised as progress. Internally, the morale is collapsing. Creative teams are burnt out, budgets are slashed, and deadlines are tighter than ever. Showrunners describe working under Iger's current regime as suffocating. Projects are greenlit for political reasons, not story merit. And the worst part? Iger knows. One executive, speaking anonymously, claimed, "Bob's no longer the visionary. He's the cleaner, and the blood's on his hands." The numbers don't lie. Disney Plus subscriber growth has stalled. Marvel films are flopping. Star Wars is frozen in fear. And now, with Ironheart failing spectacularly, Iger's once infallible strategy of IP conquers all is turning into the very poison killing the brand. It's a fall from grace few thought possible. But when you stop listening to your audience and start listening only to Wall Street, this is where it leads. Ironheart was never supposed to carry the weight of a franchise, yet somehow it became the lightning rod for everything wrong with Disney's current strategy. Riri Williams, the young genius behind the Ironheart persona, was introduced in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, a promising moment filled with potential. But what came next was a disaster in slow motion. The show's development was plagued by indecision, rewrites, and interference from executives chasing trends instead of trusting storytellers. The budget ballooned. The tone shifted constantly, from light-hearted teen drama to heavy-handed political allegory. The end result? A confused mess that alienated nearly every viewer group. Critics called it soulless. Fans said it felt like homework. And Marvel loyalists? They were angry. But here's the darker truth. Ironheart wasn't built to win hearts. It was built to tick boxes. Focus groups were ignored. Feedback loops were shut down. And when early screenings flopped internally, the studio didn't halt to course correct. They accelerated because the release schedule demanded it. And that schedule? It wasn't driven by fans. It was driven by shareholder pressure. Behind the scenes, writers were pushed to meet DEI quotas over narrative clarity. Multiple sources confirmed that scripts were being rewritten mid-shoot to correct the optics, rather than refine the story. It was no longer about what made Iron Man great. It was about what made the boardroom comfortable. And that's where Robert Downey Jr.'s fury comes in. He reportedly warned Marvel years ago, "If you don't honor the fans, they won't follow you." Disney didn't listen. And now, Ironheart stands not as a symbol of innovation, but a warning sign flashing red across the entire industry.
One major development that is now active involves drama surrounding Robert Downey Jr. in the midst of the Ironheart ratings nightmare. Now, already Robert Downey Jr. is enraged with both Disney and Marvel, as well as Marvel fans. Already Bob Iger and Kevin Feige held a recent emergency call/meeting that included Robert Downey Jr. remotely, where they were pressuring him to make a wide statement to Marvel fans to stop criticizing Riri Williams.
When Ironheart hit Disney Plus, the reaction was instant, not with applause, but with outrage. Within hours, social media was flooded. Hashtags like "Not My Iron Man" and #Boycott Marvel trended worldwide. Longtime fans, many who had stood by the MCU for over a decade, openly declared they were done. Not just with Ironheart, with Marvel itself. Review bombs hit Rotten Tomatoes. YouTube commentary exploded. And even major creators in the fan space, once loyal defenders, began posting takedown videos, dissecting every failure scene by scene. But this wasn't just internet noise. The rebellion had real-world impact. Subscriptions dropped, viewership data leaked. According to insiders, Ironheart had one of the lowest completion rates of any Marvel series to date. People weren't just turning it off, they were walking away from Disney's entire ecosystem. Merch sales? Abysmal. Even legacy Iron Man products saw a decline as parents and collectors turned their backs. And what was Disney's response? Not an apology, not a course correction. Instead, they doubled down, deflecting criticism as toxic fandom, blaming review bombing, and claiming audiences just don't get it yet. That gaslighting only made things worse. Because these weren't trolls. These were the same fans who made the Infinity Saga a global phenomenon. The same people who bought tickets opening night, dressed in cosplay, and cheered in theaters when Tony Stark snapped his fingers to save the universe. They were the heart of the MCU. And now? They're the enemy in the boardroom's eyes. Disney forgot one crucial rule. You can't manufacture loyalty. You have to earn it. And once you break that trust, there may be no coming back. Inside the glass walls of Burbank's corporate tower, panic was no longer whispered. It was screamed. Bob Iger, once Disney's golden visionary, now stood surrounded by a crumbling empire he didn't recognize. And with Ironheart's failure fanning the flames, the man who once bought half of Hollywood had only one option left: retaliation. Emergency meetings turned into late-night war rooms. Crisis PR firms were pulled in. Disney marketing, once celebrated for its magic, now turned to misdirection. Talking points were distributed. Internal memos leaked. Suddenly, narratives appeared across media. Ironheart is misunderstood. The hate is manufactured. Robert Downey Jr. supports the future of Marvel. But that was a lie. Downey wasn't on board. Sources close to the actor say he was livid, especially after hearing whispers that his name was being used to validate projects he wasn't involved in. Behind the scenes, Downey's team made it clear: stop using him. Stop dragging Iron Man's legacy through the mud. Iger didn't care, because now it was about control. Executives began blaming fan fatigue, not themselves. Showrunners were fired. Writers were scapegoated. Behind the curtain, Disney quietly shelved several projects. Some Marvel spin-offs were paused. Others, like Wonder Man, vanished without explanation. Even the tangled live-action remake, once seen as a sure hit, was pulled from production. Iger had entered self-preservation mode. He started calling old allies, asking for favors, floating return appearances, even proposing a soft reboot of the MCU. The idea? Bring back the original Avengers for one last ride. Not because it served the story, but because it might save the stock price. It was no longer about the fans. It was no longer about the art. It was about survival. But here's the tragic irony. The man who once built Disney's kingdom with visionary instincts was now gutting it with desperation, and every move he made only deepened the cracks. Once upon a time, the Marvel logo alone sparked electricity. The theater would dim, and audiences would cheer before the movie even started. But in 2025, that logo flickers, like a dying bulb, because no one knows what Marvel is anymore. After Ironheart, after Echo, after the Marvels, fans began asking the same question: what are we even watching? Gone are the days when every film built toward something greater. The Infinity Saga had a heartbeat. Every scene, every post-credit moment pulsed toward Thanos, toward sacrifice, toward legacy. Now we have disconnected timelines, variant versions of characters no one remembers, plot lines that contradict one another. Disney Plus shows rewriting movie canon, cameos that exist only to be memes, and a multiverse so cluttered, even the writers admit they're confused. Audiences aren't tired of superheroes. They're tired of meaningless content. Marvel, under Bob Iger's fraying leadership, began to feel like a factory, not a studio. A machine that churns out content, not stories. And that's the problem, because stories have soul. And lately, Marvel's soul feels missing. Ask a die-hard fan who grew up with Iron Man and Cap. Do you feel the same way about Ironheart or Agatha? Most won't even answer. They'll just look away, embarrassed, because they've defended Marvel for years, and now even they don't recognize it. The studio once known for its precision is now infamous for reshoots, VFX delays, and last-minute rewrites. Directors leave mid-project. Actors sign on without full scripts. Shows are launched, then abandoned. The entire MCU feels like a puzzle dumped on the floor, with no idea of what picture it was supposed to make. It's not just Ironheart that flopped. It's that the Marvel brand, once bulletproof, no longer knows what it stands for. And in Hollywood, when a brand loses its identity, it loses its power. And Bob Iger knows that. So what does he do next? He makes one final gamble.
for the future of the MCU, mostly related to the return in Avengers Doomsday. RDJ is already challenging both Bob Iger and Kevin Feige that he will only make statements defending Ironheart and Riri Williams if it avoids arguments about DEI. What's going on with the firings situation between Bob Iger and the many employees associated with the Walt Disney Company, with the Walt Disney Company dealing with serious consequences as a result of Bob Iger's DEI agenda and ongoing box office failures and ratings disasters? One major development going on now involves more to do with Disney CEO Bob Iger and how he recently decided to fire thousands of employees yet again, much like how he did this back in the end of 2023 into early 2024, as you guys may recall.
There was a time when just saying Avengers Assemble could send chills down your spine. Remember the portal scene in Endgame? The score swelling, T'Challa stepping out, Spider-Man swinging in, Cap lifting the hammer? That wasn't a movie. That was history. So when Bob Iger whispers about rebooting the original Avengers, bringing back Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, even Chris Evans, part of you wants to believe in the magic again. But let's be honest. Is this resurrection or desperation? Because those characters had arcs, real ones. Tony sacrificed everything. Natasha gave her life. Steve found peace. And to undo those endings, just to win back box office dollars? That's not storytelling. That's nostalgia marketing. And Disney knows it. They've seen the numbers. New characters aren't sticking. Old fans are tuning out. The only thing that still sparks interest is the past. So now, they want to turn back the clock, to revive what was perfectly concluded. Even Robert Downey Jr., who once said he was done forever, is now reportedly open to returning for the right price. And fans are divided. Some cry, yes, bring them back. But others see through it. Because it doesn't feel like honoring legacy. It feels like cashing in on it. And here's the bigger question. If you have to revive the dead to save your universe, maybe your universe was already dying. Bob Iger is gambling everything on the emotional memory of fans. But memory fades. And nostalgia only works once. So, the world waits. Will the return of Iron Man and Black Widow reignite the spark? Or will it be the final proof that Marvel has nothing new left to say? This is it. Marvel's last ace. Their multiverse wildcard. Their final shot at salvation. Secret Wars. An event so massive, so ambitious, it could either resurrect the Marvel Universe or obliterate it for good. Because here's the truth. This isn't just another crossover. It's Marvel's ultimate multiverse collision, pulling in every character, every timeline, every variant, all at once. Think Spider-Man. No Way Home meets Endgame, but on steroids. And behind the curtain, panic. Executives scrambling to replicate the emotional highs of 2019. Writers revising drafts under crushing deadlines. Rumors of cameos from every past Marvel hero. Even Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Even Fox's Fantastic Four. Even Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider. Yes, that desperate. Because Secret Wars isn't just a story. It's a life raft. But life rafts don't guarantee survival. They're a sign the ship is sinking. And Marvel? It's facing storms from all directions. Fatigue, confusion, oversaturation, and worst of all, disinterest. So now, Iger's empire is betting everything. Billions in production, decades of world building, and the fragile loyalty of fans on a single movie. But can one last multiverse blowout really fix a broken universe? Or is this Marvel's final trick in a world that stopped believing in magic? In the end, it wasn't a villain that brought Disney to its knees. It wasn't Thanos. It wasn't Kang. It wasn't a multiverse gone rogue. It was greed, not the kind in movies. No snarling tycoon or evil overlord, but the subtle kind, the corporate kind, the kind that wears a smile while selling nostalgia, then rips out the soul of what made it special. Bob Iger once stood for vision, for legacy, for the kind of storytelling that made adults feel like kids again. But somewhere along the line, that vision turned into a spreadsheet. Hits became products, characters became content, and the audience? Just numbers on a dashboard. They forgot the one thing that made Disney untouchable for nearly a century: magic. Not the kind with wands or capes, but the kind that happens when a story touches your soul, when a child sees themselves in a hero, when a family gathers around a screen not for IP, but for connection. That's what they lost. And now, the collapse isn't just financial. It's moral. It's creative. It's human. Because when you build an empire on heart and try to run it on algorithms, it doesn't fade quietly. It crashes, loud, messy, tragic. And no amount of multiverse cameos or legacy actors can fix that. So here we are. Disney, once the gold standard of imagination, is staring into the mirror, wondering how the dream became a warning. If Disney, the empire of dreams, can forget its soul-chasing dollars, what does that say about the rest of Hollywood? Maybe it's not just one studio collapsing. Maybe it's a mirror being held up to the entire entertainment industry. So the question isn't, can Disney recover? The real question is, will anyone remember how to tell a story before the magic is gone for good? If this story made you think, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.